Nate Wallace of the Knight Foundation, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
So let's start with this piece that you wrote recently about equity in the arts and how important it is. The Knight Foundation and the Urban Institute recently did a study about the importance of arts in connecting communities and found some, maybe not surprising, but pretty glaring racial disparities.
Yeah, the report was commissioned, and we found that Blacks did not have as much equity or as access to the arts as whites. And in this moment, where we all have a moment to just kind of pause and reflect, I thought it was important to talk about it. And one of the things that's absolutely been important to me is the arts, in my life. And the op-ed was actually based on a Facebook post that I did in 2014, where I actually saw this mother and her son, have this moment in front of this Kehinde Wiley piece. Mm-hmm. And the son, seen this piece called Officer of the Hussars. And he looked up the piece and he looked and he said, why is he there? And the mother literally it was really casual. The moment was maybe 5 to 7 seconds. But the mother said really casually, because he's supposed to be. And I thought that was such a profound moment, especially in a time right now where we're all kind of forced to kind of do some introspection within ourselves. We've had this moment. There is no sports. There are no outside distractions that's kind of taking us away from the moment that we're in, this moment of uprising. So we have to wrestle with the fact that there is gross inequities, in our city.
Talk about the things you see that represent disparity, even in the face of the progress that's represented by Kehinde Wiley or Bearden in the DIA.
Well, I think that specifically Kehinde Wiley, his work is framed around Black bodies being in positions that they're not commonly used to being seen in. So while I think that the DIA and MOCAD has done some really great things, while I think that Ford produces a really great car, at the same time, if there's a protest going on within those institutions, we got to look beyond the exterior. We got to look beyond these really front-facing things and really get to the heart of it. One thing that Detroit is an 80% Black city. And while we're talking about diversity, while we're talking about inclusion, and while we're talking about equity, we have to lead these conversations. We have to lead these conversations. We have to push these conversations, and it's uncomfortable. And growth is always uncomfortable. And it's a hard conversation to have. But at the same time, I love our museums. And I think that one thing that James Baldwin said, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but he said, "I love America, therefore I have the right to critique her perpetually." And I love the DIA. I love MOCA. I love our institutions. And therefore, I think that it's our right to actually critique them and make them better.
Yeah. So talk a little about the role of philanthropy, I guess, then in trying to push that and trying to push our institutions to think more about themselves and think more about how they fit into this narrative of inclusion and equity.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm really excited about, and I've been in this position for maybe about 7 months now. So it's been a wild ride in my philanthropic career coming in at this moment. Yeah. So one thing that we're really thinking about is how do we include equity in every single piece of grant making work that we do. Even though our work is not based around racial equity, how do we make sure that racial equity is included in the DNA of what we do? So how do we make sure that our grantees have a diversity strategy? How do we make sure that Black leadership is being given the capacity to actually carry out the mission of the organizations? How are we scaling up those individuals who may not necessarily have the budgets to to support $100,000. Where are those organizations at that have a $50,000 and less budget to do the work that they need to do, and how are we thinking about them? So these are just a couple of the things that we're thinking about as we kind of do our work, and equity is just embedded in our Detroit strategy going forward.